Good afternoon, one and all. This is an honor to me that I have been asked to welcome Dr. Padmanabh Dwivedi sir on behalf of Principal, GDB College and Department of Botany. Sir, it's our pleasure to have you amongst us. Let me introduce to you. Dr. Padmanabh sir is a prominent researcher and he is presently working as Professor, Department of Plant Physiology, Institute of Agricultural Sciences, BHU, Varanasi. He has done his doctorate from University Cambridge and he has a vast teaching experience of 21 years and 26 years of research experience. To his credit, he has around 90 research papers published under various national and international journals. Such a good work you have done during these years, sir. Several books have been published which having recognition nationally and internationally. Currently, 8 students doing their work under his guidance and 10 students have been awarded PhD. Sir, you have done several research projects funded by CST, UGC, DBT, DST, and you also served as Vice President of Indian Society for Plant Physiology for the year 2013. Sir has organized various seminars, conferences nationally, internationally. And this is a matter of pride that he is our next speaker and his deliberation on micropropagation and biodiversity conservation with special reference to medicinal plants and orchids would definitely benefit all of us. Welcome, Dr. Padmanabh Dwivedi, sir. Over to you now, sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Uh, I am really very much thankful to Dr. Poonam Jaiswal, who has been our classmate long back during PG. And also I'm thankful to the organizing committee of GDB Common Girls College for giving me this opportunity. Um, sure. So today I shall be talking on micropropagation and biodiversity conservation with reference to medicine plants. Basically, we already know a lot of things today. Just we heard about from the lecture of Professor N.K. Dubey sir. He touched upon various facets of biodiversity, and today I will be focusing more on how to conserve this biodiversity, rich biodiversity that our country has. With the special reference to medicine plants that we have done in our lab, and also the orchids, which are very important, particularly in the northeastern part of our country. So we already know that biological diversity is total variability within the living organisms and the ecological complexes they inhabit. It is obvious that it refers to a study of the distribution of natural habitats of plants, animals, and microbes, and their climatic conditions. Now we know that biodiversity mostly encompasses or includes diversity of form right from molecular to individuals, organisms, populations, communities, ecosystems, landscapes, and biospheres as well. Now, the United Nations Conventions on Biological Diversity, what we call as CBD, it defines biodiversity as the variability among living organisms from all sources, including terrestrial, marine, and other aquatic ecosystems, and also the ecological complexes of which they are part. So in the year 1992, in the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, it was discussed at 3 levels: ecosystem level, species level, and genetic diversity level, and all reflected in the number of different species, the different combination of species, and the different combinations within the genes. About 5 to 30 million species are estimated to be existing, and many of them have millions of genetically distinct individuals. So we will be talking more about the biodiversity in the later slides, and also with reference to medicine plants. So regarding bioresources, the biodiversity, which generally it is enormous and you know it encompasses, it requires management on scientific lines. We know that the importance of biodiversity, bioresources, what we have today. Um, Not only it serves as an important natural resource, the bioresources are they provide human beings food, medicines, and clothing, but also mental and spiritual welfare. Around more than 3,000 plant species are regarded as source of food. They're also a source of genetic resources, as wild plants are important genetic resources and used in crop breeding programs. Almost 25,000 plants with medicinal uses are listed by WHO, out of which only about 5,000, around 5,000 species have been tested for their potential source of nutrients. Plant-based medicines are the mainstay of about 75 to 80% of the world populations, and mainly in the developing countries due to its lesser side effects, including our country. And they also have a lot of potentials in R&D and pharmaceutical industries. So their identification, conservation, and characterization all become very important and crucial, owing to their a lot of commercial, ecological, and sociological importance in our day-to-day life. So as I said, that it is defined as variability among living organisms for all the sources, including terrestrial and other aquatic ecosystems and ecological complexes of which they are part. This encompasses natural ecosystems, wild species and varieties, agricultural ecosystems, domesticated species, and varieties. So regarding some, the facts and figures, we have mostly around 10 million species of, this biodiversity, out of which 1.4 million species are unrecorded. So we can know that how much we are still, underestimating the number of plants and species. 4 to 40 million species are unknown and unmonitored altogether. And India, it is a 5 to 6% of total global diversity is covered by India, and it is one of the 12 mega diversity countries of the world. Now it's 17 out of 17. We are one of the mega diversities of the country, and the northeastern regions, Western Ghats, northwestern, eastern Himalayas, and Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and owing to various, hubs of the biodiversity.
पद्मनाभ सर, आपकी आवाज बहुत थोड़ी कम आ रही है, थोड़ा तेज करें आप माइक.
अच्छा, एक मिनट. Okay, is it okay now?
बिल्कुल.
Is it okay?
हाँ, ठीक है.
Okay, so major causes of loss of biodiversity, biological diversity is the destruction of natural ecosystems. Mostly the loss of natural habitat is the greatest threat to the survival of wild species. And if we talk about this habitat destruction and fragmentation, are mostly considered as the responsible factors for the species extinction. Now, this habitat fragmentation, if you talk about it, increases the extinction rate by reducing population size, enhancing the stochastic processes and genetic bottlenecks, and eliminating key keystone predators, and also favoring edge effect. Urbanization and human activity, what we call as anthropogenic activities like clearing of land for agriculture, mining and industries, highway, construction, dam building, etc., destroy the natural habitat of most of the animals and plants. And we know that marine organisms like coral reefs have all suffered due to pollution, mostly the water and aquatic pollution. The tropical rainforests, which are mainstay of diverse, a variety of biological diversity, are being destroyed at more rapid pace. And for instance, in Australia and New Zealand, we talk about, and also in California, about 90% of wetland systems have been lost. So as the natural habitats are declining, so does their ability to provide ecosystem services like purifying water, enriching soil, protecting watersheds. All these are also declining because of those things, because of this problem. Now, next, the reason of loss of diversity is overexploitation. We have been, using it, all the plant and species, animal species, at a very fast pace. So excessive utilization of economic and valuable species for commercial purpose is another reason that is leading to large number of population being declined related to plants and microbes and animals as well. So exploitation of raw materials of medicinal importance of commercial establishments is also declining. And as we talked about, we heard from Professor Dubey lecture that many of the important medicinal plants are being overexploited for the drug because they have the potency for the drug, and R&D and other entrepreneurs are using it, exploiting. So there are more harnessing of such plants, medicinal plants of commercial importance, rather than afforestation strategies for this kind of medicinal plants. Then we also have wildlife trade and overhunting, because we know that a lot of importance, commercial importance animals are there for which we need their fur and all other things. So we mostly are involved in trade and overhunting. There is an exotic species and competition also. This leads to competition between the exotic species and the native species for food and space, and therefore there is a threat to many local populations of plants and animals. Then we have the deforestation. It's very important because one of the major causes of the loss of biological diversity is deforestation. Increased population, shifting cultivation, permanent agriculture, mining, hydroelectric projects cause deforestation, which is taking about at the rate of 17 million hectare per year. That means it comes around 1 acre per second is the loss of forest. And according to an estimate, around 47,000 hectares of forest are destroyed. More than 16,000 hectares of land turned to desert, and between 100 to 300 species become extinct. This is on an average per day basis. The tropical evergreen forest in the world, covering about 7% of Earth land surface, that contain at least 50% of important species found on the Earth. Around 50% of the world plant species occur in the forest or near them, and therefore declining of forest cover at such an alarming rate is not a very healthy indication for the environment and also for the humankind. So another loss, environmental pollution is another cause. We know that a lot of air pollution, water pollution, land pollution, and many other kinds of pollutions are there, and the phenomena are there. These days we can, the climate change is also threatening the entire human civilization and also the agriculture sector. So these are many, it's a separate topic. We can talk about this, but there are a lot of factors that are related to air pollutions and water pollutions that are directly or indirectly depleting the pollution, depleting the biodiversity level of the country. Then we have natural calamities, and also the lack of environmental education and effective legislation are also cause of the loss of biodiversity. In the remote areas, in the tribal areas, I have been in the northeastern region also. The tribal people are very naive, and many people from across the world, they come and visit as a tourist, and they take a lot of materials of plants which are of very commercial value, And because these people have no idea about the intellectual property rights and intellectual, the tribal knowledge they share with these people, and they go out and, this is how the intellectual property is exploited. And so also there is a need for effective legislation, rules and penalties and all those things, which in our country is being compromised many a times. So the rate of extinction of this biodiversity is about 2 to 8% tropical forest species have been lost between 1990 and 2015. Around more than 23,000 plants and around 5,000 animal species are threatened globally. 300 species of insects and birds depend on a single tree species. So you can imagine that if we cut a single species of a single tree, then around 300 species of birds and insects are displaced from that particular tree, and they are forced to go to another place where they will be facing a lot of competition from already existing birds and the local inhabitants. So extinction of tree species is disastrous. In India, around 15 to 20% of total vascular flora are threatened, and we know for students, we know already that data book what it is all about. It talks about extinction process, different status, vulnerable, endangered, rare, and extinct and threatened. Many of the our plants are put into the categories of extinct and endangered, and many of them are under the category of threatened. We'll be talking about medicine plants. National Medicine Plant Board, they have there are various state bodies of this NMPB, and they generally on their website they have 26 to 30 enlisted all the medicine plants which come under the red data book category. So prioritization of research and focus on validation of plants and else things is very important if you work on these selected group of medicine plants. So how to conserve, this deteriorating populations of biodiversity? There are many ex situ conservation, what we call as in vitro, that is tissue and cell culture techniques, which is very important, and it requires very little space. These are the advantages of tissue culture, and generate large scale of cultures, that is plantlets, in less days of time. And it process propagules outside seed harvesting season. If you have a lot of problem with some explants and plants, you can cultivate it and in vitro and transfer this to the field condition, even if there is a out of season. It's also boon for plant and plants conservation, and there are various techniques involved of tissue culture, like medicine culture, auxiliary bird single cell suspension, protoplast cultures, organ cultures. A lot of background noise, Dr. Poonam. So there are, basically, if we talk about in vitro micropropagation, in vitro cultivation, that is biotechnological intervention. And when we talk about culturing the explants, when we talk about plants, it's all based on physiological paradigms. Like culture and nutrient media developed by physiologists, they give impetus to tissue culture. Similarly, if we talk about chloroplast fusion, cytoplasmic fusion technology, that is fibrous and hybridization, they are based on physiological principles, which encompasses both nutrients and many other things. Similarly, in regeneration of plants through tissue culture, it is the main role of GA and cytokines that based on concept of permeability, methylation, cytokinins, ABA, and many signaling of abiotic stresses, fast carbon dioxide assimilation, and rapid translocations, enzymes involved in regulating various metabolic activities, and so are the genes which have been identified and engineered to develop transgenics for higher productivity, self-life, and quality, are all based on the biotechnological interventions which have roots in the physiological paradigms on the physiological principles. So this is mostly for many of your students who must be participating in this conference. As the teachers, we already appreciate and know what tissue culture is all about. Basically, this I have made for some students for the student purpose. This refers to technique of growing plant cells, tissues, organs, seeds, what we call as a explant or other plant parts in a sterile environment on a nutrient media. And basically all these facts are based on the concept of pluripotency. We know that is the capacity of cell to develop into an organism by regeneration. And the first pioneering work was on a tobacco plant that was raised from actively growing callus. And this has been exploited, this principle has been exploited in various culture like protoplast, cells, tissues, and organs in vitro. So this is in a nutshell the micropropagation, what we call as an in vitro propagation. And if we talk about in vivo propagation, that would be macro, M-A-C-R-O, macro, like grafting and vegetative cuttings and all those things. But when we talk about propagation in vitro, that we call as a micropropagation. And we can divide this into organogenesis and somatic embryogenesis. Again, the organogenesis and somatic embryogenesis are the processes which can be, lead to plant-like production using, direct organogenesis or indirect organogenesis. If we have indirect organogenesis, it involves callus. And if we produce, the multiplication of the shoots basically directly from the explant, it becomes direct organogenesis. So is the case with the embryos, indirect somatic embryogenesis through callus or direct embryogenesis directly from the explant. And then there is a formation of somatic embryos on the explant surface and followed by germination and plantlets. And from callus also somatic embryos can be formed, obviously, by manipulating various cultural conditions in vitro and also the environmental conditions. The more we come across the literature with various genotypes and various explants, the more we come to know about what are the various factors that would govern the formation of somatic embryos from callus. And ultimately, the formation, germination takes place and the plantlets are produced. This is all about in micropropagation in general. Organogenesis can be, as I talked about, I just mentioned that it takes place through callus as well as explants. If it is a root, it is root culture. If it's shoot tip and axillary bud, then it is correspondingly known as shoot tip and axillary bud culture. The examples are thousands, but there are some important ones. The pioneering work on which the shoot tip and axillary bud culture were initiated, like the root culture were initiated, the leaf culture, mostly famous for Rauwolfia, Azadirachta, Hordeum vulgare, or Rhiza sativa, because these are the pioneering plants on which the leaf culture were previously initially tried, embryo culture, and then seed culture. So this is all a part of organogenesis. Now, the callus culture for dear students, if we take about the part of explant as the leaf explant, you can take a tip, you can take the margin of leaf, you can take the basal part of leaf, or you can take the middle of. You have to avoid the veins. And if you directly put into the culture media, you know the formation of callus, and you know that what callus is all about, and this callus formation takes place. It has, benefits also. It has drawbacks also. Which we can talk later on a separate issue. This organ culture, this is a plant. If you want to take a leaf culture, you take leaf. If you want to take antennode, you can take antennode. You can stem, roots, and a lot of background noise is coming. Somatic embryogenesis, the somatic embryos are derived from somatic cells. These develop into whole plants. As I just mentioned, that embryos are obtained either directly from cultured explants or indirectly from callus and isolated single cells. This has been tried in many plant species, including dicots and monocots, and it is one of the very versatile techniques for micropropagation of plant species, particularly in the forest trees species. And a lot of advantages are there, that it offers rapid multiplication through production of somatic embryogenesis in cell cultures, and therefore useful in conservation of bioresources. We'll talk this about also when we talk about synthetic seeds and cryopreservation at a later stage. This is somatic embryogenesis. The stages, different stages: globular, hard, torpedo, and cotyledonary. And from there, cotyledonary, we develop the plantlets directly. So this micropropagation, generally, we do the propagation of plants through tissue culture, through axillary budding, adventitious shoots, and somatic embryogenesis. These are the most three important part through which we can micropropagate on a large scale, that we multiply. And this requires 4 stages. We all know: collecting the elite germplasm for culturing, then taking back into the lab, washing them and sterilizing them, and then putting back to the inoculation on the laminar flow, and After having done that in suitable nutrient media under aseptic conditions, we transfer this to culture room or plant growth cabinet with suitable environmental conditions. So this all culturing encompasses 4 stages, and any part of plant could be taken as an explant in culture or nutrient media. We know that a lot of media are known, many for woody tissues, some kind of other media like plant woody media is known, but basically B5 and Gambox media, what we call as White's media, Knits media, and the most widely used is Murashik and Scoop MS media. You can take half strength, you can take full strength, you can take 1/4, depending upon the design of your experiment, depending upon what really you want to produce in that particular nutrient media. And finally, a large number of plants can be produced from a single explant. This is the beauty that if you start with a single explant and without any hustle of contamination, without any problem, if your hands are very skilled, you can from a single explant generate hundreds of plants and then multiply in the same lab without going outside looking for other explant, and you can thousands of plants can be produced in vitro, and which you can do all this kind of hardening and then field acclimatization and transfer these plants to the field condition. And the protocol says that your plants, in vitro raised plants, if they survive for 2 to 3 months, most of the 70-80% plants they survive, then your protocol is supposed to be successful. So there are 2 protocols. We do micropropagation, one in the lab and another outside the lab during the process of field acclimatization. So there is a lot of scope for students in R&D and in the biotech industries. If you are a good biochemist, you are a good physiologist, biophysicist, you can work on in the lab on the drugs production, on the micropropagation production. And there are people, agronomists and other plant physiologist groups are also there who takes care of the plants once they are transferred to the field conditions, and that is separate issue. So, you have a scope of in this biotechnological sector of plant tissue culture. So advantages of micropropagation are small surface, plants difficult to be propagated in vivo can be propagated in vitro, and then production can be maintained without seasonal variation. And it has enormous potential for conservation of plant germplasm and therefore the biodiversity as well. So these are some kind of pictures of organogenesis, somatic embryogenesis with embryo formation, and from there you have got the plants, likewise the organogenesis, and this is the meristem culture on the apical shoot tip, and finally you get this plant through meristem culture. So there is also plant genetic engineering is coming to the way where we can harness the genetic constitution of a good plant, where we have traits of very beneficial aspects, and that can be transferred into the plants in which we want to modify that plant for their quality, for their various good purposes. If that attribute is not present in one plant, we can transfer the gene that is taking care of that particular metabolite, that taking care of that particular enzyme or any metabolites. And this, if using this plant genetic engineering, we can transfer and produce in vitro condition the plants, they will behave like the parent plants. So we have Agrobacterium tumefaciens and rhizogens. We have gene-gun microprojectiles, electroporation of protoplast, which we'll talk about a bit, protoplast fusion, microinjection, silica carbide fibers, micro laser, genome editing, and RNAi, which is the latest addition to this pool of genetic engineering. With all these tools and techniques, you can always get the transgenics, and it would be good for your food sector. It will be good for agricultural production sector, and that's what different labs are working. The university labs are also working, and the government aided labs are also working, like CSIR and DBT funded laboratories across the country. They are already working on this, how to make climate resilient crops. Because of global climate change, we are facing a lot of abiotic and biotic stresses. So we need to modify the genetic constitution of plants, and so that they are able to survive under these rigid conditions and stressful conditions. At the same time, they retain their property for what they are known for. So these are the techniques where these are taken into care to produce that kind of plants. We don't go into detail here because that is a separate issue here, but just a glimpse for students. This is genetic transformation, permanent incorporation of new or foreign DNA into genome of cell. Transformation methods like protoplast fusions, in which we dissolve the cell wall using a lot of, some buffers are there and some reagents are there. Enzymatically, they are removed. Those in the field, they already know. We need naked plant cells from two different plants can be mixed together and forced to fuse. And these protoplasts are plant cells with a plasma membrane, but without cell wall. And therefore, they can be referred as functional individual cell with plasma membrane as outermost layer, we all know, and the only barrier between environment and cell contents. So a lot of manipulations can be done experimentally in the lab. This is the beauty of the isolated protoplast. And so is the case when we talk about protoplast fusion and somatic hybridization. So how to, isolate the protoplast? We take plants, peeling of sterilized leaves. The peeled leaf parts are incubated in cell wall digesting enzyme and plasmolysis takes place. And then there is a release of protoplast. We wash them. We isolate this. We plate the protoplast. Then there is a regeneration of cell wall, which you can view. Then microcalli are obtained obviously with the manipulation of nutrient media, and then callus, and from callus organogenesis, and then whole plant can be, the cycle can be completed in this way. And the protoplast develop, there are many things. So you have to isolate and you have to induce, and then you have to develop this protoplast. So normally regeneration of cell wall starts within a few hours after isolation, and followed by cell expansion, and then the cell division, which normally takes, depending upon the genotype, mostly 2, very rare, but at least 4 to 8 days. Then cell colonies are formed, and the callus are put in an osmotic free media, and then organogenesis and embryogenetic differentiation takes place depending upon your design of experiment, what you are looking for. And a mixing of protoplast of two different genomes, that is what we call as a protoplast fusion. We are coming to somatic hybridization, which really is the beginning, was the beginning of transgenic technology in 1970s. Started with Larbeck, the scientist who carried out this kind of work. That is the spontaneous fusion from callus tissue. They do not regenerate into whole plants. Whereas the induced fusion, we take help of PEG, which is high yield, gives good results. Sodium nitrate, calcium at high pH, and electrofusion. So electrofusion, what we talk about protoplast fusion, two distinct species of plants are fused together to form a new hybrid plant with the characteristics of both. We talk about protoplast fusion using electric current, and this is very less damaging than chemical. What then it takes place is that there is mostly we take the help of fuses and material, dextron electrical stimulus. The protoplasts are brought in close contact by a non-uniform alternating AC current between two electrodes. Fusion is initiated by field pulse of high voltage, around 500 volt to 3 kV for very 10 to 1000 microseconds. And then protoplast, when initiated into high frequency AC current in a low conducting medium like mannitol or sorbitol between two parallel electrodes, which are separated by 0.1 to 1 millimeter apart, what happens that they act as dipoles, and they are attracted to each other along the strongest field lines. Once protoplasts are coming in contact, a high frequency of fusion is achieved by disrupting the plant membrane of protoplast with the short DC pulse. This approach leads to only production of viable heterokaryon. The once heterokaryon is formed, following events occur in order, like wall regeneration by heterokaryotic cells, fusion of nuclei of heterokaryon to produce hybrid cells, plating and production of colonies of hybrid cells, selection of hybrid subcultures, and induction of organogenesis, and likewise the hybrid colonies and the transfer of mature plants from regenerative plants take place. So this is mostly very important and most of the preferred way of transferring the genome, DNA. So this results in heterokaryon cell containing two or more nuclei from different cells, homokaryon from same cell. This allows us to regenerate cell wall and then grow into callus, and callus turns to shoots. And this is what I was talking about, somatic hybridization. We know that sexual hybridization is limited in most cases to cultivars within a species or a few wild species that are closely related to a cultivated crop due to incompatibility, sexual incompatibility. And plant protoplasts offer exciting possibilities in the somatic cell genetics and crop improvement. There is a fusion of isolated somatic protoplasts and development of their product, what we just call as a heterokaryon, to a hybrid plant, and the nucleus and cytoplasm of both parents are fused, but not in hybrids. This is here the protoplast, A and B parents. There is selective chromosomal loss. In this case, the hybrid is formed, and this is protoplast of characteristics of both the parents are there. And with the selective chromosome loss from one parent, we get hybrids. And these are asymmetric hybrids and symmetric hybrids. They have a large application in the improvement of crop cultivars. So symmetric hybrids, these plants retain the full or nearly full somatic complements of the two parental species. And such hybrids provide unique opportunities for synthesizing novel species, which may be of theoretical or practical interest. And asymmetric hybrids, which are very important if you compare with the symmetric one, because they show the full somatic complement of one parental species, while all or nearly all chromosomes of the other parental species are lost during the preceding mitotic divisions. And the available evidence indicates that such kind of hybrids, that is asymmetric hybrids, show a limited introgression of chromosome segments from the eliminated genome. And that's why this is due to the drastically enhanced chromosomal aberrations or mitotic crossing over in vitro. So this is the beauty of this. But basically, we talk about hybrids offers, a lot of more, insights and inputs. If we talk in terms of in vitro culture, they are the cells containing nucleus of one species but cytoplasm from both the parent species. And we also have shotgun approach to transfer the DNA, where the DNA is coated with microbullets of gold or tungsten, and they are shot into growing cells. The DuPont company holds the patent. This is of the US company. I'm not going into detail how to shot into the growing cells these DNA coated microbullets. This is all available in textbooks of tissue culture or biotechnology. This injures, the cells, and it has got very success rate. Then we also have PEG-induced fusion, which is also used for study of drought, stress, pores open similar to electroporation. Then we have microinjection, where single cells from culture are held stationary with gentle suction on the needle, and the needle that is injected with a tiny syringe loaded with DNA. You need a lot of small pores for this, and we can take the help of electroporation technique. This is, we have already, I already covered high energy pulses, 50,000 volts for a millisecond. And this is called tiny pores to open, allows DNA to enter the cell. Okay, so we were talking about micropropagation, and one of the beauty of plant tissue culture is synthetic seeds. So as we talked that you can always take the seeds, you can always take embryos, you can always take callus, you can always take any product of that, and you can preserve in a thin layer of hydrogel and store it for a longer period of time. As and when required, you can take out these synthetic seeds from the cryopreservation material, where you have put it under -196 degrees centigrade. And this is what we call as synthetic seeds or encapsulated seeds or artificial seeds. And we take the help of calcium alginate or sodium alginate or sodium pactate as hydrogels, which protect the metabolism of the seeds as such. And when we put into the cryopreservation, the metabolic activity ceases at this temperature, so that there is no damage done to the inner contents of the seeds. And when you want to really sow these seeds, you can thaw the seeds, and there are stepwise processes. And then when you sow it into the soil, it will behave as a parent seed, and the plantlets which you grow, even after 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, it will behave like a parent plant. And the true can be grown into pots to raise seedlings or into the field conditions. Offers surplus and biodiversity conservation through cryopreservation, as I said, because you cannot put this under room temperature or -20 or -40 or -80. You can put it, but it may not survive beyond a few months. But if you want to, store it for a longer period of time, 5 years, 10 years, and people have even notice that even after 20 years of preserving, cryopreserving these synthetic seeds and many other, tissues, they were able to, get back the true behaving parent plant from the same explants, which were cryopreserved for such a long period of time. Another beauty of plant tissue culture, or you can say that micropropagations in the biodiversity conservation is meristem culture, where you can produce disease-free plants, but not disease-resistant plants. And mostly shoot meristem culture offers the best possibility for this. And you know that there is a rapid cell division in the shoot meristems, which is faster than the nuclear protein multiplication, and that's eliminate virus-free cells. And this, people have got from callus in potato, gladiolus, tobacco, and many other plants. They have eliminated mottle virus, potato virus, sex was mosaic virus, and many more viruses. Also, increased resistance to fungal pathogen, Phytophthora infestans, have been also observed not only in case of viruses, but few fungal and mycoplasma disease have also been cured using meristem culture in clonal plants through mesophysic protoplast of potato. So this is, the meristem tip 0.1 to 0.5 millimeter. This is the dome, apical dome, and this is, more of the giving you a picture of apical meristem, how it looks like. Some more crops have been already, propagated by shoot tips. The list is long, but some of the important like Ilium, Artocarpus, Musa, Pictoriza, Saccharum, Morus, and the responses they have got using the shoot tips, and they have been able to generate multiple shoots, plantlets, and embryos. This is the, the procedure of meristem culture. The culture procedure remains the same of micropropagation. Only you have to isolate the single, shoot tip and then put it in the desired nutrient media, and where they will multiply, and then you can do the rooting and hardening and acclimatization, and then you can transfer into the field condition for the your benefit. Production of virus-free plants, as I said, that it's used for multiplying, maintaining, storing, and distributing plants. And maintaining unique plants for breeding, propagation, or distribution can be expensive in terms of time, space, and labor required. But in vitro propagation of apical meristem is important for virus elimination therapy. And using this, people have taken the tissue culture germplasm, and that are helpful to breeders and nurseries, and also meeting current time regulations. So many times when there is, if you want to get seeds or any explant from outside the country, there are quarantine stations at the airport, at the sea, and the plant pathologists and tissue culturists or biotechnologists are there. They take the sample and then raise the plants through various tests, and they come to know that whether these plants are okay or not. And that's why a lot of certifications are required from the importing country that this is safe and everything. There is no genetic manipulation. It's not going to be used for many other things. So a lot of legal actions, and you have to follow regulations, and it will come to, firstly in the New Delhi, and from there NBPGR is there. They will ascertain, and then they will come to your lab or to your department or to university. The production of this germplasm may be a source of genes for improving such traits like insect and disease resistance. So the beauty of this, production of virus-free plants through shoot tip meristem is also that it improves quality, drought or cold tolerance. We have been using to raise the plants, stress-tolerant plant. We are taking care of this kind of shoot tip meristem for drought resistance in our lab. Then increased yields, low chilling requirements, adaptation to mechanical harvesting, or longer shelf life in distribution and retail channels also. Many times foreign pathogens continue to pose a problem to the threats to the crops in the region where they are transported. So it prevents introduction of quarantine pathogens in important prohibited germplasm using a range of diagnostic techniques to intercept them, like ELISA and many others. Develop improved methods of detecting quarantine pathogens are there, which investigate the etiology of poorly described diseases and pathogens. They eliminate quarantine pathogens from valuable plant germplasm. Complete therapy on sweet potatoes infected with Gemini viruses is the monumental work that was established. And it also provides tissues from in vitro therapy for PCR detection of Gemini viruses in sweet potatoes. A very good work on this, which was initially done and proved its effectiveness. You know, the mechanism is very simple. Apical meristem tips are excised in sterile condition, either from in vivo or in vitro plants or highly proliferating meristems. Then you transfer into the tubes, and then you maintain the tubes into the cultural conditions. And these are some kind of plants, but there is also a good scope of, you know, heat therapy, because if you combine thermotherapy with the meristem culture, the efficiency of virus elimination and good quality crops production increases. So what you do is that you expose the plants to 35 to 38 degrees centigrade firstly, and then you take the explants or the shoot tip of that particular plant, which have been growing under these conditions of temperature, and then you follow all the procedures. Then when you get the plant, they behave very nicely. Their performance is very good compared to only meristem culture. So high temperature treatment has been widely used in production of virus-free plants. These are some of the examples. Okay. Cryopreservation, as I was telling you, arrest of metabolic function of biological materials stored at low temperature. Materials treated with cryoprotectants. Firstly, DMSO are the materials. You have to chemically, protect them and then put into the, at minus 196 degrees centigrade, and can be stored for a long time and used as and when required. And what we have been using for this, cell suspensions, calli, somatic embryos, shoot tips, anthers, all are subjected to cryopreservation, and plants are regenerated. So this has been tried for rare genotypes, recalcitrant seeds and embryos, and they are very good in biodiversity conservation through germplasm bank and cryobank. We have a lot of banks in India under the National Repository Bank funded by DBT, whether it is cryobank, pollen bank, germplasm bank, any bank, seed bank, everything is there. You can also deposit yours one with proper procedure. So we are also taking care of tissue culture for raising tolerant plants. Tolerant plants mean abiotic tolerant plants. If we talk about salinity, we know that a lot of problems of salinity, drought, and heavy metals in many areas are there. So one example is like if you talk about drought, you can induce the drought using PEG, and the plants following micropropagation, whatever you get, will be able to survive to a certain level of drought. And if you transfer these plants to a field condition, to the areas where they can survive up to that particular drought for which you have tested. So you can always raise, abiotic tolerant plants through tissue culture also. With this we have been doing in our lab for phytoremediation, for heavy metals, for salinity, for drought, and the method, is quite successful. Now, the medicinal plants, as I was talking about with reference to medicinal plants, I will give very rapidly some slides of our own work on certain selected plants here. We know that plant and their parts are used in Ayurveda since Vedic ages, and sizable number of plants are well recorded in Rig Veda, we know 2000 BC, and later on the numbers are increasing in Atharveda. This I will skip, this is all about Ayurveda. The basic purpose of collection of these medicinal plants is the plant substances, what we call as bioactive compounds, bioactive principles, or metabolites, or phytoconstituents, whatever you call, is to produce best quality drug with safety and efficacy. According to Charaka, the best drug is that which alleviates disorders. Further, Charaka has emphasized that any plant substance should have 4 basic qualities to become an ideal drug. Abundance, it should be very much abundance in the plant. Effectivity, the precision of its efficacy, various pharmaceutical forms that it has the ability to be combined. So there should be chemistry, biochemistry should be flexible, that it can take different ways of formulations, and the rich in property. So these are 4 basic characteristics of that metabolite or bioactive principles that are desirable in any medicine plants. Okay, so we will be talking about Oroxylum indicum, Rubia cordifolia, Piper melliflua, Elaeocarpus, Rudraksh, Stevia, and Gymnema that I have worked on many medicine plants in our lab, but these are some of the selected ones that I will be talking about, that how with different strategies you can really conserve these highly important medicine plants. This is, Oroxylum, which is very important anti-cancerous plants, and also in various cough and syrup Ayurvedic formulations it is coming. So you can see that how we have done this shoot multiplications with different combinations of BA and for 7 weeks, 12 weeks, 8 weeks. And likewise, this is simple from nodal expanse, you see. And this is how for the students that we do the hardening and then we acclimatize it, and later on it is able to be transferred to the field condition. Now, this is also one of the phytochemistry, if you want to really study that how much of the phytoconstituents are present, like in this xylem, alkaloids are there, reducing sugar, tannins, steroids, flavonoids, triterpenoids, saponins are there. So you can study that in vitro notes from where you have taken the experiments, and this is in vitro notes that you generated the plants in vitro. You can study also using HPLC and HPTLC that what kind of phytochemical constituents are present in your microshoot generated plants or not. So this is one of way of phytochemistry you can do with the tissue culture as well. Yes, this is what I was saying. You have to calculate RF value for saponins, flavonoids, or any other metabolites that are present in that particular plant which you are studying using various solvent methods, specific solvent methods, and spraying reagent. And you can see that your protocol of micropropagation really, if it changed the profile of the bioactive principles or not. If it is not, then you can say their protocol is very good because it did not alter the phytoconstituents level. Because in many 2-3 months of survival in the culture, there is every possibility of somatoformal variation and many other attributes that the synthesis of that particular bioactive compounds could be compromised. So you have to ensure that after having done this protocol, obviously you have multiplied the plants in large number, but whether it is able to retain that medicinal property or bioactive principles or not, you have to do many things. And one of the things is that you have to check, verify using the phytal constituents for phytochemistry. And we'll talk that also you need to have the stable genetic stability also to ascertain where you can take the help of molecular markers, and which we have done, and we will show you that how really you can ascertain that there is no change in genetic constitution as well, and that is good for your protocol as well. So this is what we talk about Oroxylem again in MS media and different this Rubia cordifolia is very good. This is a DBT project that we worked on dye production, and you can see that how really it is being cultured in vitro under MS media and also in many other media like B5 also. This is the rooting, you see rooting how it is formed. The beauty of this thing is that you don't have to put in the rooting media because the roots are normally going very nicely here. But this regeneration of shoots is very important. Then through callus formation also, how the callus are being formed, and this callus can be transferred to nutrient media, and you can entirely get the medicine plants, Rubia cordifolia. Okay. Next is, this is Piper mollissia, as very important plant, threatened medicinal plants from Arunachal Pradesh, and is used for various ailments, particularly bronchitis and dyspepsia, and Hajmola and cough syrups में भी इसका काफी इस्तेमाल होता है, और ये बायो एनहांसर के रूप में भी जाना जाता है. जिस समय हम लोगों ने इस पे काम किया, there was no report on micropropagation. So initially we tried to grow this because it was very difficult, but we could be able to grow it at least to the hardening stage. This is how you can do with Piper mollissia. This is Eleucarpus, Rudraksh, Ekmukhi, Domukhi, Panchmukhi, various kind of Rudraksh, which is anti-aging effect is known for. Electromagnetic and inductive properties. It has positive effects on heart and nerves, relieves from stress, anxiety, depression, palpitations. You must have heard about this. And not many work was done in the northeastern region for this. We have tried to do this through NMPB project, and using MS media, we could regenerate some plants of Eleucarpus and transfer to field conditions in the low level of Himalayan region, and they were able to survive, still surviving. I hope I have moved from there. Now I don't know because more than 10 years, more than 10 years, yes. Okay, so stevia is another plant that we have been focusing. It is, anti-diabetic plant, what we call as a madhupatra, and it has got stevioside and riboside, which is more than 300 times sweeter than that. And its good thing is that it is non-nutritive, high potency sweetener, and it is a good substitute of sucrose. And it has stevioside and riboside, what we call the ditructin glucosides. It has also got antioxidant and antimicrobial properties, and is recommended for diabetes and cardiovascular and skin problems. And it creates, beauty is that it creates no digestive problem. And, it does not break down chemically inside your, the digestive tract, and it is safe for diabetic patients, and all the tablets are coming on the table now. So we have tried this under UGC project, and you see that with the subculture fourth passage, how much good growth of stevia plant is getting. We have organogenesis through callus formation, and you see how it is being, done ready for field transfer. This is in 3 Biotech and Vegetosis Springer already published. And this is, the secondary callus production of this one using B5 media, using various combinations of auxin and cytokinin. We also did the, HPLC analysis, how you can do that. I was talking about phytochemistry. You can take the help of HPLC, and using standard, you can assess what was there in the parent plant and how much stereoside you got in the in vitro regenerative plants. It should be more. If it is less, your protocol is not good. So if you want to transfer this to medicinal industries, R&D industry, such kind of plants, they will be interested whether its bioactive principles is not compromised. So you have to assess that, and you can assess that through HPLC study. Yeah, this is how you can do this. And we also did, the ISSR analysis using primers, that, how much is the whether this binding pattern changed or not under in vitro conditions and under, different compared to the standard one. So there was no change in the profile. And we have also done this on drought stress also, and then you have to compare whether this is being compromised or not. We have done also a lot of effect of signaling agents on this. If they are able to, alleviate, increase the content of stereoside, maintaining the genetic stability or not. So this is not the story, the crux in this our presentation. This is something else. I'm just talking about that, trying to give you that not only generating multiplication of high number of plants are important, you have to ensure that its property, medicinal value, or whatever it is there, dye or whatever you want to do, that property is not compromised, genetic stability is not compromised, then your protocol is good enough. Okay, so yeah, you see this is PEG induced. What we have tried to, generate this, subject this stevia into the drought condition. Then we have used SNP donor. This is alleviates abiotic stress. A lot of work is going on nitric oxide signaling in my lab. And this is the pitricin. This is pitricin NO. So you can see that how the morphology looks like. And then when you add these ameliorating agents, signaling agents, how it gives a better performance. We have checked the HPLC also. We have done the genetic stability also, that how really if it is good or not. You see, this is how it looks like in vitro propagation of stevia under drought test in half strength MS media. You can see that how it looks like. This is 5% PEG. This is 10% PEG. This is 15% PEG, and this is coming. How nicely it is coming, and we have acclimatized nicely with this one. So this is how you can all check with this. You see the HPLC of this with PEG induced alone, drought stress, drought with one ameliorating agent, another ameliorating agent. So a lot of things can be done using tissue culture. This is what I really want to convey the message. Same the profiling of analysis for under these studies. So you can do a lot of abiotic stress tolerant management also. This is all stevia transfer in the field condition, how luxurially it is breeding. Stevia plants, mother plant, stevia plants generated in vitro, and with also with PEG induced and ameliorated with the SNP and many other signaling compounds. So another Gymnema sylvester is another anti-diabetic plant we have done, and we have worked on this. We have propagated it, and we have also published a lot of papers. We have also tried to see how really pharmacognosy it is valid. We have tried to see the effect of gymnemic acid, gymnemagimine, which is bioactive compound, that how really it is controlling diabetes in rats. In rats, where we have to take the peritoneal macrophages, and we did the splenic lymphocytes, and we did the peritoneal macrophage superoxide production, NO production. So we have proved that immunologically it is a good modulator of immunology. under the normal rats also and under the diabetic rats also. And this we have done like GS leaf extract as well as active bio compounds. Genomic acids significantly stimulate in vitro immune responses of macrophages isolated from normal and diabetic rats. And the same is true for splenic lymphoproliferation. And this work was published in Phytotherapy Research and PLOS One. Similarly, we also demonstrated that GS extract not only improves the metabolic disorders in diabetes, but also ameliorates the depressed immunity in diabetes and can restore the innate immune function. The traditional knowledge on the use of Gymnema in treating diabetes was scientifically supplemented in our study for its immunomodulatory properties. So I'm not going to give here the entire diabetic and pharmacognostic work here, because the aim of this slide presentation is different. Okay, now coming to orchids. This is the last phase. I think it will take 10 minutes only. I hope everything is in time, Dr. Poonam. This is Orchidaceae, which is the largest family of the flowering plants distributed almost throughout the world. And in the northeastern area like Manipur, Nagaland, and to some extent in Arunachal Pradesh, they export this, to various Thailand and many other countries, and a lot of money they fetch. So I selected two of the plants, Hygrocalis parrishi, which is endangered plants in that area, and Ascocentrum ampullaceum, which is also endangered one. These are the composition you can try with MS, MKC, VNW, INY. These are specific to, MKC, VNW, IN, mostly they are used in orchids only. So you try a lot of micronutrients manipulating vitamins also, deviating from the known composition of this, with a lot of manipulations we have to do in this vitamins and other things to get maximum proliferation. So you can see that various growth regulators are being implemented for multiplication of protoform-like bodies in Hygrocalis. So how beautiful the pictures are from the Hygrocalis from different sources. Yeah, this is again say seedling growth response in Hygrocalis parrishi. We took the seeds and then supplemented with 50% coconut milk and 10% banana pulp. No, we wanted to make it more economical. So rather than using a lot of sucrose and a lot of other adjuvants, growth additives, we tried to use coconut milk and 10% of banana pulp, half ripened. And were very surprised to see that it was very good responding compared to normal composition of nutrient media and regulators. So this was very economical, and you can see the beautiful cultures of these Hygrocalis plants. And finally, we have tried to transfer these into various potting mixture, and you can see that the potting mixtures like seedling waste from this media hardening compost mixture of brick, charcoal, tree fern, that gave the best response of proliferation and sustainability of the cultured plants. This is Ascocentrum, which is very notorious and not very good. We have to try a lot of composition. Many times the seeds of orchids are not very good. You must have heard about this. So we have to do a lot of manipulation of environmental conditions with the growth regulators, and then a lot of growth additives we had to add. And finally, we were able to germinate the seeds. And then this is the inflorescence bud culture. And you can see that how with different media and everything, it is responding. And this is another morphogenetic response of Ascocentrum, where we try to inoculate axillary buds in the Archimedes media. Nicely growing, we will be able to transfer 5 to 10 shoots from single expanse. And all these have been, transferred, and in the Forest Institute of Arunachal Pradesh has been done. Again, this multiplication of protoform-like bodies with callus and shoot buds in Ascocentrum. You can see this is from our lab at that time, and we were able to induce a lot of plants and then transfer to the orchidarium. Yeah, again, the seedling growth response in Ascocentrum. So a lot of scope is there, that how you can deviate from, and you can think of many other economical terms. Like I have also used, you can also use simple tap water also many times to sterilize it. Don't use double distillation water because it is cost effective. It takes a lot of money. And many times, depending upon the area, tap water simply works very nicely. And all these kind of casing, hydrolysate, coconut milk, banana pulp, and all these have worked wonder in propagation and even given a better response in orchids. And they have overcome the germination problem in orchids also. This is the potting mixture. We have tried a lot of potting mixture on the orchids. And finally, I think I would finish with this. I hope that I was able to, apprise you of various techniques of micropropagation, what can be done to conserve the biodiversity, how the tissue culture involves phytoconstituents, how you can do the molecular works also related to this, how you can produce the climate resilient crops also. And finally, I would like to acknowledge those persons who were involved in these cited medicinal plants and orchids, Dr. Anamika Boro, Dr. Vengam Malashadang from Manipur, Dr. Purni Madhuve, Dr. Pallavi Singh, Dr. Vineet Kumar Singh, Dr. Naveen Pradhan, Ms. Sankita, who is working on the effect of brassonolites on stevia, and Akanksha Guru also, who is working on another signaling effect of signaling agents. And all these medicinal plants and the orchids projects were funded by DBT, NMPB, CSP, UGC. Thank you very much for your patience hearing, and I would like to thanks again the organizers for giving this opportunity. If there are queries, I would be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Very nice deliberation, sir. You really match what has been said in your introduction, and your work is really very beneficial. Now, I request participants, if you have any queries, you can connect or you can send it in your chat box.
Hello.
Yeah.
Sir, my question is there limitation from plant side also, means which plants can be means micro propagated or not, because field crops are usually not done. So
no, you have to try. I mean, mostly you will have to avoid the, if the plants are herbaceous and shrubs in nature, then it's not a problem. If they are of woody nature also, it is not a problem, unless and until there is a lot of exudation from the woody expands, then there is a problem because they inhibit the micropropagation processes. Otherwise, many of the dicots, most of the dicots you can multiply without any problem. Yeah, sometimes some inhibitor compounds are produced, some kind of, that there are strategies also to overcome all those things. You can add activated charcoals, you can have PGP. There are many other compounds are also there. You can put in the nutrient media to which will absorb all these kind of inhibitory substances that are produced, phenols and many other things because of the woody nature of the explant, and probably it might work. So you have to try. But as far as herbs and shrubs are concerned, any plant, whether field plants or any plant, they can all grow without any problem. Yes, but sometimes, many times what happens initially with tissue culture, you have to show perseverance and patience and hard work, because many times contamination is a great problem. My students many times have contamination problem, 6 months, 7 months, and they're on the verge of, भागने के चक्कर में था लोग नहीं सर नहीं होगा. But after having all this kind of exercise and skillful operations, once the results start coming, you can compensate it within 1 year. No problem at all. Only thing you have to, your hands are to be very skillful, and whatever you are doing, you have to focus. When you are inoculating, focus everything. When you are sterilizing, focus everything. And obviously, there are many strategies are there, many ways of there are for aseptic sterilization methods are there, which you can deviate from what normally is the practice. So you have to be ingenuine. Ingenuity is very much there, demanding. दैट कि जो लिखा है बस वही करना नहीं है, वो करेंगे तो हो सकता है वो उस पर्टिकुलर प्लांट के लिए कहा गया हो. आपका प्लांट, आपकी जो मेटाबोलाइट्स है उस प्लांट की डिफरेंट हो सकती है, उसका डिमांड कुछ और हो सकता है. तो आपको उसके डिमांड को समझना होगा, एंड वो समझने के लिए फिर आपको कुछ इधर उधर के हिट एंड ट्रायल मेथड्स भी करने होंगे. सो यू हैव टू कीप योर आईज ओपन एंड ये सब चलता है इसमें. Minds are like parachutes, they function only when open. तो अपने ब्रेन को हमको अप्लाई करना है तभी वो काम करेगा. नॉट नेसेसरली एवरीथिंग थंब रूल जो है वही मेरे को फॉलो करना है.
ओके सर, थैंक यू सर. सर मैं अभी आपका स्टूडेंट ही हूँ, BSc एज कर रहा हूँ सर, बनारस हिंदू यूनिवर्सिटी से.
क्या बात है, वेरी गुड. कम एंड मीट मी सम टाइम.
हाँ
अरे
सर,
सर
आज
थर्ड ईयर में है सर अभी.
वेरी गुड, वेरी गुड.
सर नाम तो
सर
बताओ, स्टूडेंट नाम
सुबह-
क्या
हाँ
है?
स्टूडेंट नाम बताएं.
शुभम पाल.
तो सर आज का दिन BHU के लिए डेडिकेटेड हो गया.
एक्चुअली हम लोग सर से पढ़े, काफी अच्छा लगा हमको. सेकंड ईयर में पढ़ाए थे सर, बहुत अच्छा पढ़ाए थे सर.
चलिए, वेरी नाइस
ओके.
नाइस टू हियर फ्रॉम यू. सर मैं एक चीज पूछ रही थी, जैसे राजस्थान, जैसे वी आर सेइंग कि थिंक लोकली एंड एक्ट ग्लोबली, दूसरा टाइप. तो हमारे यहाँ कोटा रीजन के आसपास ये एनोगाइसिस बहुत है, धोकड़ा.
या श्योर श्योर.
कोटा के पास में धोकड़ा जिसे कहते हैं, एनोगाइसिस, ये बहुत
या
अब मतलब खत्म होता जा रहा है, एंडेंजर्ड होता जा रहा है स्पीशी. और वो जैसे आपने कहा कि ये भी एक वुडी और एक ट्री के जैसे है. तो हम अपने स्टूडेंट्स को जैसे मोटिवेट करें कि वो कुछ माइक्रो प्रोपगेशन स्टडीज की तरफ अग्रसर
हाँ.
हों, तो कुछ बेसिक चीजें, मतलब जैसे होता है ना कि सम परसेंटेज ऑफ सक्सेस दिख रहा
Yeah.
हो, तो शैल वी गो फॉर इट?
Yeah, you can try with the embryogenesis, and you can try with the leaf culture of those things. Starting
Okay.
first try to produce callus, and probably from there, because if it is a large tree, then
Yeah.
it's really become very difficult, very
Okay.
difficult. So
Okay.
the juvenile explants of leaves you can take,
Mhm.
and the leaf shoot tip of that, and if
Okay.
you can produce embryos somehow, probably,
Mhm.
then it might work. But it requires a lot of manipulation of nitrogenous compounds in the Newton media.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. you
So
have to-
definitely, if any of our student takes interest in it,
yes,
we'll
obviously.
we'll take your
Obviously.
help.
And also you'll have to look for those Newton media which are good supportive for woody kind of plant explants.
Okay, sir.
Woody
Okay.
plant media is one of them.
Any other participant interested in asking any question? Now over to Poonam.
Thank you, Dr. Padmanabh, for a very informative and knowledge-filled talk on micropropagation and how to raise virus-free plant detection of pathogens, cryopreservation, and how to propagate medicinally important plants using tissue culture techniques. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
सर हम आपको दोबारा मौका देंगे फिर और
बिल्कुल देंगे. आप दूसरे एक्सपेक्ट पे देंगे. आप दूसरा एक्सपेक्ट बताइए, दूसरे पे हम लोग बात करेंगे.
बिल्कुल सर, बिल्कुल आगे हम ऐसा ऑर्गेनाइज करेंगे और आपको फिर बुलाएंगे.
Thank you very much. I can see many of my friends. Nagendra Dwivedi is also there. Hello to Nagendra, and thank you very much to all of my acquaintance and you and Madam.
Sir, Anita
Fatima.
Bharti is also there. Anita Bharti is also there.
Oh, Anita is also there. Hello.
Sir, I should say that today is BHU's day only.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much.